Tips and tricks on your straight up and down handstand. So I'm not going to go over so much the kick up or the entrance, just really to focus on helping you or your students with these tips to feel that nice and straight plumb line. Now, being in a banana back, honestly, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a good place to just kind of figure out how to balance on your hands. But as you work towards finding that straight up and down, these tips and tricks can really help you. So Nell, the first one we're going to do, and I really like to work from the ground up, and that's as a teacher what you want to do, because when you put someone just straight up into a handstand, a lot of times they're really thinking about their feet or their legs. And since we're talking about building from the ground up, then we want to try to think, okay, hands, right position, let's get the shoulders up and over, let's get the hips up and over, and then we work on the legs, feeling like they're in the right place, one leg at a time. So slowing it down with this first trick and tip, it's really like a trick, helps a lot. It also helps students build strength in their arms and their mind-body connection. So this is how you get into it. She's basically going to walk up the wall. That's why she's facing away from the wall. She comes into tabletop, and the feet, balls of the feet are just right at the wall. So tuck your toes under. There we go. So heels are at the wall. Then you're going to have your hips either right over or slightly behind the knees. Now, it's really hard to cue exactly the setup because proportions are all so different. Hands underneath the shoulders. I do like to make sure my students have their hands in the correct position. So hands shoulders distance, spreading the fingers wide. I know Nell has her own practice. She's got her hands a bit more narrow and straight so that her index fingers are forward. For the most part, if I know that my student is quite tight in the shoulders, new to this, maybe not that strong in the shoulders, I'll turn their hands out and take them a bit wider, so shoulders distance or wider. You can do what you like. Now keep in mind that this is always going to be a bit of a tighter tabletop. If it's a wide tabletop, when they walk up the wall, their hips will be behind their shoulders. It will deplete the purpose. You can rest for a second. One thing that tends to happen when students walk up the wall and they begin to bring their hips over is that when fear starts to come into play, or when lack of strength, right, they feel like they can't support themselves, they're going to feel like it's too tight. Like, oh, I'm going to fall forward. But that's exactly what you want. You want them to feel like they're bringing their hips over, which will bring the weight of their body over their hands and shoulders. And that's when they're building the strength, the proprioception, because they're essentially going to be in a pike, as well as teaching them now, when you feel the weight to come over, grip with your fingertips there, your brakes. So I'll show you what I mean. Let's see what it looks like the correct way. So she's in a tighter tabletop. Okay, she's going to lift her knees up off the ground and come into a downward facing dog. So lift your hips all the way up, push your chest back, bend your knees a little. Yeah, there you go. So first to get up, she's going to be pushing away from the ground. It makes it so much easier. You're going to bring one leg up, your knee stays bent, and really push with your hands back into that foot to make it easier to walk up the wall. Then bring your other foot up to meet that. So she's pushing back for now. Then as she begins to straighten her legs slowly, she goes halfway, the weight starts to come into the heels of her hands, then into the fingertips. You feel that? Good. She doesn't need to straighten her legs all of the way. Once her hips come over, then one leg goes up. Good. So we work on finding straight handstand with one leg. I see that it looks nice and straight. She might be a little close, so this leg can't straighten, can it? And if that's the case and you see that happening in your student, you can just have them hop the leg up a little bit so that they can straighten the leg. You feel that? So I look from the side, I'm making sure that I'm spotting her, shadow spotting, not touching her, but my hand is there. And if she brings a leg too far over, which a lot of people start to do, then I just guide it back and I say, okay, this is your straight feeling. Draw the ribs in, push through the fingertips and the base knuckles, point the toes, you can walk down. So doing it with one leg, great job, makes it so much more accessible. If you find they're too close, like I saw just then, and your student just can't get into the pose, is not comfortable, moving the foot up a bit doesn't help, then have them come down and move just slightly forward. But you don't want to do this. Try it with the hands too far forward. so that they can see what it looks like. Yeah, so try it like that. This is not what you want, I think. We'll see. Now straighten your legs. This actually works. So this works too, right, for her. But notice she had to come really far on the tippy toes. So it's almost, come down. It works, but it's almost just a little bit too far. So somewhere in between that would have been perfect for you. Let's do it the right position, somewhere in between that. And I would, since it's a one-legged thing, I would have your students do it on both sides, okay? So again, she walks up the wall, and if it's too close or they're scared, you can have them walk up the wall a little bit more so their feet are higher than their hips. She brings her hips over, sticks her booty back up and over, and one leg comes up. Exactly. This is also a great way to teach the plumb line for them to, with your spotting, to feel what it's like to balance, because now she has a base or a foundation to sort of push off of without reaching that leg up and over. Come on down. It can also help them understand that idea of pulling the thigh bone back to bring the hips over to find the plumb line rather than reaching the top leg over, which not only creates a banana, but in my opinion makes it really scary because all of a sudden you're closer to falling into a back bend. So lots of great ways here to help. I use this for a lot of different ways to get into handstand, right? L kick up, it helps as well, but really helps to build that plumb line from the ground up. Now, once I feel that student, I usually start there with the straight, and then I turn them around. Now they're facing the wall. This is another tip and trick. So they're going to measure about a shin's distance. So how I do that is sole of the foot, right? So heel on the wall. Good. You could sit down. It's much easier. Like sit down like this. So wherever my middle of my knee is, that's where I want the middle of my hand. We'll see if it works, because essentially she's going to bend her knees. Now this time she's facing the wall. She's going to do her typical kick up. Since this is the straight up and down handstand, I'm not going to talk a lot about the kick up. Student goes up to the wall, and now their feet come there. Stay there for now. So the reason why I do it this way is because the wall is overhead. And when you don't use this trick, you or your students will be in a back bend. Now try to find your handstand. So the hips are going to end up staying overhead, and then you're trying to get into it from a back bend. We don't want that. So she's going to bend her knees and bring the soles of the feet to the wall, feeling like her shins are parallel to the ground. And then from there, she's going to draw her ribs in and draw her tailbone towards the backs of her knees. Then, are you too close? You could keep your heels right on the wall. There you go. So you feel like there's a straight plumb line. Look at your thumbs. Good. Now one leg comes off the wall, points the toes, comes onto the toes here, and tries to find straight from there. You're looking for keeping the whole lower, it's kind of hard because you're in a bit of a hollow back. Maybe you were a little bit close or a little bit, too close to the wall. So you're really trying to keep everything tucked in super tight and slowly coming off the wall. And this helps because now, if we're talking about from the ground up, from the hands, shoulders, hips, and now to the knees, you are straight up and down in your handstand. And I'm gonna say all you have to do is take that one foot off the wall. Now, that's still difficult because, again, you're resting on something. It makes it easier to help a student find their plumb line, but from a perspective of someone who's already balancing in a handstand, it's hard. Anytime you're being spotted or resting on something and not just kicking into it, it can throw you off a little bit. So that's another tip and trick. Then going super, super close to the wall is something that I've seen students do and use successfully to find that straight, but also to, and again, we're not teaching this right now, but to slow down that kick up. So fingertips touching the wall. One of the harder things about this trick is that with the fingertips touching the wall, so all the way, you have to do the kick up with your head drop down. Let's try it, which can be really, really challenging, but it does help to teach how to get nice and straight. Nice job. So her butt's on the wall, her heels are on the wall, her head is dropped. She can really focus here on pushing down through her hands, elevating the shoulder blades, activating the lats, the serratus anterior. That will help the ribs have more space to draw in. She can focus now on squeezing the thighs and the butt, really pointing her toes. Great job. And notice how all she needs to do, come on down, watch your head when you come down, keep your head dropped. So what's great about that one is that when you work on the engagement from the ground up, especially as you get into the elevation of the shoulder blades, the drawing in of the ribs, the engaging of the glutes and the inner thighs, all of a sudden your feet, if you're doing this as she was doing it, come off the wall themselves, right? But the problem is students who are newer to handstand will do all of these actions really quickly or with a lot of engagement, which then throws them off the wall, which is why I always say when you're looking for that really tiny balance space, all of those adjustments are happening slowly. You're using your exhalation to find that plumb line. This is probably the more effective one in terms of adjusting how you should or how your students should be feeling when they're trying to find the plumb line, as well as when they're balancing in it and going for a longer hold in that position. Let's see, anything else for the straight? I guess with this one, it's more so helping your student feel it, right, and spotting them. So you're just going to turn this way to the front of the mat, and we're going to kick up, and I'm just going to sort of like tap, which is more so adjusting, but it's a great trick in the adjustment. You might want to go forward more so you don't kick the wall. Okay, so she goes up. I know she can balance, but I'm going to just help her because she's doing a ton of work today. So if I see heels over, I just move the legs back. I put my hands on either side of the thighs and I do a little lifting motion. So then any sort of elevation of the shoulder blades can happen. If I want her to squeeze her thighs together, I can squeeze her thighs together from there. If I want her to engage her glutes, I just tap. If I want her to point her toes, I just tap. And then I just help her find that light line, which is somewhere over there. It's hard when you know your own line. Great job. So really helping someone feel, lighten the load helps there. It's a great assist, to lift them up a little bit. And she's very light and she knows where her line is, so I can kind of feel where is off and, where is too far forward, where is too far back, and guide her into it. Those are my tips and tricks for your handstand, straight up and down.